this sort of man. They therefore were looking for the traditional madman, someone who was, say, foaming at the mouth or had a vacant stare.
If I was conducting an interrogation of this individual back then, I probably would focus in on the fact, if it was Jack, say, "Hey, Jack, I know you got blood on you, Jack. I know you got blood on you. It's not a question of whether or not you did it or not. I know you did it, but I know you got blood on you."
I think you can say Jack the Ripper was cunning rather than clever. Clever he may have been, we just don't know. But certainly he had luck on his side and must have had a degree of animal cunning to escape the police net.
5 women had been brutally killed, and still nobody could name the man who had committed the crimes. 4 years later, in 1892, the file was closed on Jack the Ripper. 2 years later, Sir Neville Macnaghten, senior official of Scotland Yard, wrote a memorandum stating the 3 chief suspects he believed might have been the Ripper.
No one ever saw the Whitechapel murderer. Many homicidal maniacs were suspected, but no shadow of proof could be thrown on any case. I may mention the case of 3 men. Mr. M. Druitt, said to be of good family, who disappeared at the time of the Miller's Court murder, whose body was found in the Thames about 7 weeks after that murder. He was sexually insane, and from private information, I have little doubt that his own family believed him to be the murderer. Michael Ostrog, a Russian doctor and a convict, who was subsequently detained in a lunatic asylum as a homicidal maniac. Kuzminski, a Polish Jew and resident of Whitechapel. He had a great hatred of women, especially of the prostitute class. He was removed to a lunatic asylum in March of 1889.
Macnaghten's memorandum was published in 1915, and ever since, criminologists have debated its merits. Chief Anderson of the Metropolitan Police wrote that the Ripper had been positively identified. He was a local Jewish man, picked up after the final murder and put into an insane asylum. He could not be named or tried because he had gone insane and was unable to defend himself.
When you search the asylum records looking for an immigrant patient from Whitechapel who fits, there is only one who fits with the timing of the end of the murders, and that is a man called David Cohen, 23 years old, who was taken by the Metropolitan Police because he had had a fit of raving mania and they picked him up on the streets. He was taken by the police 4 weeks after the last murder. It looks as though David Cohen was the man they believed was Jack the Ripper.
While 19th century police believed that a serial killer was a homicidal maniac, this view would be expanded in the 20th century, when 70 more suspects would be named as Jack the Ripper. The name Jack the Ripper has come to symbolize terror the world over. Stories about this phantom of death are so compelling that even the great master of the macabre, Alfred Hitchcock, based his very first film on the well-known tale of a lodger, mistakenly thought to be the Ripper. In his film, Jack is called the Avenger.
Your officers from Scotland Yard, what's your name? George Bunting.
In 1932, director Maurice Elvey produced his version of the same plot, The Phantom Fiend.
You stay here. Show us the room. Come along.
Movies entertain us with Jack the Ripper mythology, but theories abound. Speculation is fair game.
I could give you a lovely story that Oscar Wilde was Jack the Ripper. Nobody's ever suggested it, but take it from me, he wasn't.
The only person who hasn't been dragged in yet, and I'm just waiting for it to happen, I've thrown out a few in, is Florence Nightingale. And Queen Victoria herself. Both of those are completely out of the score for the moment, but just wait.
Cream has been put forward as a suspect for Jack the Ripper, although he was in prison in Illinois in the USA at the time of the Ripper murders, which I think writes him off conclusively. The Cream theory originates from the fact that the hangman Billington, whilst on the scaffold hanging Cream, heard the words "I'm Jack the" as the trapdoor was sprung, and then it was cut off by the rope.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, speculated on a Jill the Ripper. If a man was in disguise as a midwife, he could move about the streets with blood-stained clothes, undetected.
Chapman does remain a plausible suspect. He was, of course, a different sort of killer when apprehended at the turn of the century. He was poisoning wives. Now, this is a far cry from a lust killer murdering prostitutes.
If you are fascinated with the mystery of Jack the Ripper, you are a ripperologist. Using modern FBI profile techniques is one tool this historian used to focus on self-proclaimed Dr. Roslyn D'Onston as a very plausible ripper. It started with his wielding a sword when he was 18 years old as a surgeon and soldier in Giuseppe Garibaldi's Italian campaign in 1855.
And bit by bit, over a long period, as I managed to find out about his service with Garibaldi, I managed to find out his medical experience, I managed to find out his association with prostitutes, I managed to find that 5 people independently at a later date were pointing to him as the Ripper, or potentially the Ripper. Most important of all, in 1896, W.T. Stead, the former editor of the Pall Mall Gazette that D'Onston used to write for, actually in print in his magazine border said that for a whole year I believed him to be the veritable Jack the Ripper.
D'Onston was in the perfect location to perpetrate the murders. He placed himself as a patient in a London hospital, located a few blocks from Bucks Row, scene of the first murder.
His actual capacity to become a serial killer died, of course, with his failure in health. He was no longer, after 1889, capable of another cycle of murders.
The theories that intrigue people the most involve the Royal House of Windsor. It is a shocking thought that a member of the monarchy, the head of a great nation, could actually be involved in the crimes of Jack the Ripper. It all centers on this man, the black sheep of the royal household. Prince Edward Albert, Duke of Clarence, was grandson of Queen Victoria and heir to the throne. Physically weak and poor in his studies, he was a target of gossip, especially about his sexuality. He died in 1892 of influenza or syphilis. The stories vary. Theories began in earnest when Sir Thomas Stowell published an article in 1970 stating that Sir William Gull, physician to the Queen, committed the murders with the Prince, who was in the delusionary stage of syphilis and was somehow compelled to slaughter prostitutes.
And in that way, you know, leaps and bounds, almost like a fantasy game, the Duke of Clarence was dragged in for the first time. That immediately attracted worldwide attention because anything to do with the royal family sells newspapers.
Then, in 1973, a bizarre new twist. The prince had fathered a daughter with an East End Catholic woman. Gull and Freemasons covered up for the prince.
And the whole thing was a Masonic conspiracy to save the crown, because the Duke of Clarence had done something he shouldn't have done. He had married a Roman Catholic lady and had a child by her, and that was death for the royal family. So, in fact, all the people who knew about it had to be eliminated. There were 5 prostitutes.